Producers tried to control Chuck Berry's votes. His response ended the show. This is the incredible true story of September 14, 1967, when Chuck Berry was serving as a judge on America's Rising Stars, one of television's most popular talent competitions, and how his refusal to compromise his artistic integrity when pressured to manipulate the results led to one of the most dramatic moments in TV history, and exposed the corrupt practices that were destroying the authenticity of American entertainment. It was the height of the civil rights era, and television was slowly beginning to integrate African American performers and personalities into mainstream programming. Chuck Berry, now an established rock and roll legend with hits like Johnny B. Good and Roll Over Beethoven, had been invited to serve as a judge on America's Rising Stars, a primetime talent competition that aired live every Thursday night on NBC. The show was groundbreaking for featuring Chuck as one of the first African American judges on a major network talent program. His presence brought credibility to the show's musical segments and attracted both black and white audiences who respected his expertise and honesty. Chuck had accepted the position because he believed in discovering and nurturing new talent, remembering his own struggles to break into the music industry. For the first 6 weeks of the season, Chuck had served with distinction as a judge alongside Broadway veteran Helen Morrison and pop producer Gary Richards. He was known for his honest, constructive criticism and his ability to identify genuine talent regardless of a performer's background or musical style. Contestants and viewers alike respected Chuck Berry's integrity and musical knowledge. But by September 1967, the show's producers were becoming increasingly concerned about ratings and advertiser demands. The pressure from the network executives was mounting, and the show's creator and executive producer, a man named Donald Whitman, was looking for ways to manipulate the competition to create more dramatic storylines and guarantee specific outcomes that would boost viewership. The crisis came to a head during the semifinals, when 12 contestants were competing for 6 spots in the finals. Among the performers that night was a young African-American singer from Detroit named Michael Williams, whose soulful voice and original songs had impressed audiences and judges throughout the competition. Michael was clearly one of the most talented contestants, and Chuck Berry had been consistently supportive of his performances. Also competing that night was Kevin Sullivan, a clean-cut white singer from Ohio, whose performances had been competent but unremarkable. Kevin had a wholesome image that appealed to certain demographics, but his musical abilities were limited compared to other contestants. However, Kevin had a powerful advantage that had nothing to do with his talent. His father was a major advertiser on the show, owning a chain of appliance stores that bought significant commercial time on NBC. 3 hours before the live broadcast, Donald Whitman approached Chuck Berry in his dressing room with a request that would change everything. "Chuck," Whitman said, closing the door behind him, "I need to talk to you about tonight's voting." Chuck looked up from the notes he was reviewing about the contestants. "What about it?" "I need you to make sure that Kevin Sullivan advances to the finals," Whitman said directly. Chuck studied Whitman's face, trying to determine if this was some kind of joke. "Donald, you know I vote based on talent. Kevin's a nice kid, but his performance tonight wasn't strong enough to advance." "Chuck, this isn't about talent," Whitman replied, his tone becoming more serious. "This is about business. Kevin's father represents over $200,000 in advertising revenue for this show. If Kevin doesn't advance, his father has threatened to pull all his advertising and possibly influence other sponsors to follow suit." Chuck Berry felt his stomach tighten with disappointment and anger. "So you want me to vote for Kevin instead of the most talented performers?" "I want you to be practical," Whitman said. "Helen and Gary are already on board with this. Kevin will advance, and will make sure the other 5 spots go to genuinely talented contestants. It's just one compromise to keep the show on the air." Chuck shook his head firmly. "Donald, I agreed to be a judge because you told me this show was about discovering real talent. What you're describing isn't judging, it's acting in a scripted show." Whitman's expression hardened. "Chuck, I'm not asking you as a friend. I'm telling you as the executive producer of this show. Kevin Sullivan advances to the finals, or we're going to have serious problems." "What kind of problems?" Chuck asked, though he already suspected the answer. "The kind of problems that might require us to reconsider your position on this panel," Whitman said, coldly. "You have a very lucrative contract here, Chuck. Don't throw it away over one vote." Chuck Berry stood up slowly, his decision crystallizing in his mind. The money from the show was significant, more than he made from many of his concert tour, and losing the position would cost him both income and visibility. But the compromise Whitman was demanding would destroy everything Chuck believed about artistic integrity and honest evaluation of talent. "Donald," Chuck said quietly, "if you're telling me that my vote has to be based on advertising dollars instead of musical ability, then you're telling me that this show is a fraud." "I'm telling you that this is how television works," Whitman replied impatiently. "Every decision is influenced by business considerations. That's reality." "Then reality, and I don't get along," Chuck said. He began gathering his notes and personal items from the dressing room table. Whitman watched nervously as Chuck prepared to leave. "Chuck, where are you going?" "The show starts in 3 hours." "I'm going home," Chuck replied. "If you want someone to rubber stamp your predetermined results, find someone else to do it." "You're under contract," Whitman said desperately. "You can't just walk out." Chuck Berry turned to face Whitman directly. "Donald, my contract says I'm supposed to judge a talent competition based on my honest assessment of the performer's abilities. If that's not what you want from me, then you're the one breaking the contract, not me." Chuck Berry walked out of his dressing room and headed directly to the studio exit. As he passed other staff members and contestants preparing for the live broadcast, word quickly spread that something serious was happening. Helen Morrison caught up with Chuck in the hallway. "Chuck, what's going on? Donald is saying you might not be available tonight." Chuck looked at Helen, a woman he had come to respect during their 6 weeks working together. "Helen, has Donald asked you to vote for Kevin Sullivan regardless of his performance tonight?" Helen's expression told Chuck everything he needed to know. "Chuck, it's just one vote. Kevin's not terrible, and it keeps the show running." "Helen, how many times have we compromised just one vote? How many talented kids have we sent home because their parents don't buy advertising time?" Helen looked uncomfortable, but didn't answer directly. "Chuck, this is a business. We have responsibilities to the network, to the sponsors, to the people who work on this show. What about our responsibility to the contestants who trust us to judge them fairly?" Chuck asked. "What about our responsibility to the audiences who believe this is a real competition?" "Chuck, please don't do this," Helen said. "Your position on this show is important. You're breaking barriers, showing that African American artists can be respected judges and leaders in the entertainment industry. Don't throw that away." Chuck Berry paused, feeling the weight of Helen's words. She was right that his position was historically significant, and walking away would certainly damage opportunities for other African American performers to achieve similar roles in television. But Chuck also understood that staying and participating in a rigged competition would be worse than leaving. If he compromised his integrity for money and visibility, he would be betraying every talented performer who trusted him to judge them honestly. "Helen," Chuck said gently, "if I stay and vote the way Donald wants me to, what kind of example am I setting? What kind of barrier am I really breaking if I'm just another person who can be bought?" Before Helen could respond, Chuck Berry continued walking toward the exit. As he reached the studio door, Gary Richards appeared with Donald Whitman close behind. "Chuck, we need to talk about this rationally," Gary said. "We can work something out." "There's nothing to work out," Chuck replied. "Either I judge based on talent, or I don't judge at all." Whitman made one final attempt to save the situation. "Chuck, what if we compromise? Kevin advances, but you can vote honestly on all the other contestants. That way the most talented kids still have a chance to succeed." Chuck Berry stopped walking and turned to face Whitman with an expression of complete disgust. "Donald, do you hear yourself? You're asking me to participate in fraud and calling it a compromise. There's no middle ground between honesty and corruption. Chuck, be realistic, Whitman pleaded. This is television. Everything is influenced by business considerations. You can't expect complete artistic purity in a commercial medium. I don't expect complete purity, Chuck said firmly, but I do expect basic honesty, and I expect that when we tell contestants and audiences that this is a talent competition, we actually mean it. Chuck Berry pushed open the studio door and walked into the parking lot, leaving behind his lucrative contract and his groundbreaking role as one of television's first African-American judges. The immediate aftermath was chaotic. With less than 3 hours until the live broadcast, the show's producers scrambled to find a replacement judge. They ultimately brought in a session musician who was willing to follow directions without asking difficult questions about artistic integrity. That night's show proceeded as planned, with Kevin Sullivan advancing to the finals despite a performance that even sympathetic viewers found mediocre. The manipulation was so obvious that several entertainment journalists began investigating the show's voting procedures. Within 2 weeks, the story of Chuck Berry's walkout had leaked to the entertainment press. Chuck initially refused to comment publicly, not wanting to damage other people's careers or create problems for the remaining contestants. But when reporters discovered evidence of other voting manipulations on the show, Chuck decided to speak honestly about his experience. In an interview with Rolling Stone magazine, Chuck explained his decision. I was hired to judge talent, not to participate in a business arrangement disguised as a competition. When they told me that my vote had to be based on advertising dollars instead of musical ability, I knew I had to leave. The revelation sparked a broader investigation into reality television voting practices. Congressional hearings were held about deceptive practices in television programming, and the Federal Communications Commission began requiring more transparent disclosures about how talent competition results were determined. America's Rising Stars was canceled after 2 more episodes, as sponsors withdrew their support and audiences lost faith in the competition's authenticity. The show's cancellation was attributed directly to the loss of credibility, following Chuck Berry's exposure of the voting manipulation. But perhaps the most significant impact of Chuck Berry's decision was its influence on other artists and judges in the entertainment industry. His willingness to sacrifice money and career advancement for artistic integrity became a powerful example of moral courage in an industry known for compromises and ethical flexibility. Years later, when reality television became a dominant force in entertainment, Chuck Berry's 1967 walkout was frequently cited by critics and reformers who argued for more honest and transparent competition formats. His decision proved that individual integrity could challenge and change corrupt industry practices. The financial cost of Chuck's decision was significant. He forfeited the remaining 2 years of his contract and lost approximately $150,000 in guaranteed income. But the respect he gained from fellow musicians and the broader public was immeasurable. In later interviews, Chuck Berry was often asked whether he regretted his decision to leave America's Rising Stars. His response was always consistent. I was hired to judge talent, not to participate in fraud. When those 2 things became incompatible, the choice was easy. The young singer Michael Williams, who had been passed over in favor of the sponsor's son, eventually signed a recording contract with Motown Records and had several hit songs in the early 1970s. In interviews, he always credited Chuck Berry's integrity and honest judging during the early weeks of the competition with giving him the confidence to continue pursuing his musical career. Kevin Sullivan, despite advancing to the finals through manipulation rather than merit, never achieved significant success in the music industry. The artificial boost he received from his father's advertising influence ultimately did more harm than good to his artistic development. Chuck Berry's experience on America's Rising Stars became a defining moment in his understanding of the entertainment industry and his own role within it. The incident reinforced his commitment to artistic independence and his refusal to allow business considerations to override musical judgment. In his 1987 autobiography, Chuck Berry wrote about the incident. "Television taught me that success without integrity is just failure with better publicity. When they asked me to choose between my principles and my paycheck, I learned that the choice says everything about who you are as an artist and as a person." The legacy of Chuck Berry's walkout extended far beyond television. It became a powerful example for musicians, judges, and entertainment industry professionals who faced similar pressures to compromise their integrity for financial gain. The story proved that individual moral courage could challenge and change corrupt institutional practices. Today, Chuck Berry's refusal to participate in the manipulation of America's rising stars is remembered as one of the most principled stands in entertainment history. It demonstrated that true artistic leadership sometimes requires the courage to walk away from lucrative opportunities when they conflict with fundamental values of honesty and fairness. The incident also highlighted the ongoing tensions between commercial interests and artistic integrity that continue to shape the entertainment industry. Chuck Berry's decision to choose integrity over income became a benchmark for evaluating the moral courage of other artists facing similar ethical dilemmas. If this incredible story of artistic integrity and moral courage moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this video with anyone in the entertainment industry who faces pressure to compromise their values for money or success. Have you ever had to choose between your principles and a lucrative opportunity? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to ring that notification bell for more amazing stories about artists who chose integrity over income.